Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my pipetteman, my 1000 microliter pipetteman, my P1000. I'm going to adjust the volume of this to 975 microliters. Now, what you could do is 900 plus 75 microliters of water, but what I want to do, more important than anything else, is maintaining a consistent volume of the Bradford reagent across all of these samples. I'm adjusting my pipetteman to 975 microliters so I can transfer exactly that same volume into all of these cuvettes that sit in the foreground. Done. 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 4 and 5. All right. So all of my cuvettes here have the exact same volume. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust my P200, my 200 microliter pipetteman, to 25 microliters. Now, what I want to do is I want to use my spectrophotometer. This right here measures light within the visible light spectrum. So that's approximately 400, 450 to 700 nanometers. We are going to measure light with a wavelength of 595 nanometers, and we're going to measure how much of that light is absorbed. So I want to establish a blank. So this would be my blank in the absence of any protein. Now, I believe that you'll be able to see this whenever I add this right here is my first protein sample. I'm pipetting it very thoroughly so that I can make sure that this is completely mixed. I'm going to get a new pipette tip. Then, so what I would do is I'd measure the blank and then I'd measure the absorbance of this sample. So sample number 1. Sample number 2 here. Now what I'm expecting is I'll be able to see that they are both blue, but they're slightly less blue as we have slightly less protein in there, okay? Now, new pipette tip, sample number 3. Here we go. New pipette tip. Sample number 4. New pipette tip. Sample number 5. Now what you can see here is that my sample with the greatest amount of protein is this one right here. Sample number 2 has half as much protein as sample number 1. Sample number 3 has half as much protein as sample number 2. Sample number 4 has half as much protein as sample number 3, and sample number 5 has half as much protein as sample number 4. So we can see that the blue pigment definitely, or the blue hue, is less intense. Our spectrophotometer is going to be able to quantify that and tell us something about the light that's absorbed by this sample versus this, and this. Now this Bradford reagent that we're using absorbs light at 595 nanometers. So how much light is absorbed? The greater amount of blue pigment, the greater amount of light absorbed. The greater amount, and therefore the lower amount of blue pigment, the less light that's absorbed. Okay, so those are our 5 samples, or those are 5 samples. Now, I did some things different to account for volume differences. In addition to that, what I want you to take away from this is, well, each sample here has less protein than the preceding sample. So we'll be able to quantify or we'll be able to draw a correlation between the light that's absorbed and the concentration of protein in that sample.